Hello, I'm Sean Starr. This is number 0859, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0859. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet David Dunaway, who is the author of A Four-Eyed World, How Glasses Change the Way We See. How and when were glasses invented in the first place?
Glasses were invented in the 1280s, some 750 years ago, in Italy, and probably either in Florence or Venice. These glasses were called rivet glasses. There were two lenses in a wooden frame held together by a rivet, so you could open them and close them. They wouldn't stay on a face. You had to hold them in place.
Rodney Phillips is the author of the suspense novel Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. This was a novel that he started writing when he was just 19 years old. Then he stuck it away in a filing cabinet for 37 years before he finished it, because life got in the way with working, raising kids, and coaching football in school. But then the kids grew up.
I wasn't coaching anymore, so I was actually driving my wife nuts on the weekends because I was used to getting up at 8 a.m. and I'd be gone all day coaching and stuff. And she's like, you got to find something to do. You got to get a hobby or something. So I said, well, I might pull my book out and take a look and see what I have there. And she's like, you mean all those notebooks that we've been carrying around? I'm like, yeah, I'll just, see what I have.
Dog trainer Kathleen Troy, author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad, is back with Pet Hints. This time, it's about adopting a dog before you shop for one.
You don't see them anymore. It used to be a common thing that you would see a pet store at any large shopping center or even at our malls. Now I ask people when I meet them and their furry little friend, I'll say, where did you find your baby? And for the most part, they've adopted their fur baby. Or every now and then I'll hear, well, I got it from a reputable breeder. I think those are the two main areas that people look to when they're thinking about getting a pet.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0859, was Sean Starr, who is the co-host on the TSN 690 morning show here in Montreal. Thank you very much, Sean, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Now, let's get right to the stuff. 51-year-old Kevin Dale Westerhold was arrested on January 27th for indecent exposure after allegedly performing sexual acts with a vacuum cleaner at Windsor Hills Resort near Disney World in Kissimmee. Deputies responded to 911 calls on January 22nd, but Westerhold had already left the scene. Witnesses provided statements and cell phone video showing Westerhold partially clothed during the incident at the gated community. Police say the witness accounts and video evidence suggest multiple instances of indecent exposure at the property. Westerhold was arrested at his Oviedo home about 35 miles from Kissimmee and charged with exposure of sexual organs, a misdemeanor. First of all, I'm guessing that Westerhold is slightly dismayed that his charge of exposure of sexual organs is only a misdemeanor. Hopefully, for his sake, the evidence won't stand up in court. Also, I searched high and low but couldn't find out the brand of vacuum cleaner that he used. I wonder if it was a Dyson.
The Dyson, the first vacuum cleaner with no bag. No bag and no loss of suction.
Nope, I'm not touching that one. Let's just move along. 2-year-old Jude Owens from England became the youngest person to achieve 2 impressive billiard feats, earning Guinness World Record recognition. At 2 years and 261 days old, Owens broke the record for youngest snooker double pot, legally sinking 2 balls into 2 different pockets with 1 cue ball strike. He followed this achievement by setting another record at 2 years and 302 days old for the youngest pool bank shot where the cue ball hits an object ball off rails before pocketing. Now, Jude's father, Luke Owens, said he recognized Jude's talent from the first time holding a cue. Said Luke, "Jude has achieved quite a lot in such a short space of time. But to have 2 world records, it's probably a pinnacle moment." The proud father expressed hopes his son might become a world champion, calling it the biggest aspiration if he was to achieve that. Well, if that kid doesn't put himself through college for being a world champion, I'm guessing that at the very least, he'll put himself through college by fleecing his friends in games while growing up. Australian Jay Vine secured his second Tour Down Under victory in 3 years after overcoming a dramatic kangaroo crash during the final stage on January 25th. The 29-year-old cyclist was among several riders who collided with 2 large kangaroos that bounded onto the road at 30 miles per hour near Adelaide, 61 miles from the finish line. Vine hit the backside of one kangaroo, forcing him to swap bikes twice before rejoining the pack. 3 cyclists abandoned the race, and 1 kangaroo was later euthanized due to injuries. Despite losing most of his UAE Team Emirates support crew, Vine maintained his 1-minute 3-second lead over Switzerland's Mauro Schmid to claim victory. Said Vine afterward, "Everyone asks me what's the most dangerous thing in Australia, and I always tell them it's kangaroos." He went on to say, "Point proven today." Wow. That's like a scene out of the movie Kangaroo Jack.
You all right, dog? Come on. Come on! I just got my ass kicked by a marsupial.
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Eyeglasses have become so commonplace that we hardly think about them. But David Dunaway does think about them. In fact, he's written a book called A Four-Eyed World, How Glasses Change the Way We See. David joins us from New Mexico via Riverside.com. Hi, David.
Hi there.
Thanks for being on the program with us. Now, you are a professor of English at the universities of New Mexico and Sao Paulo, Brazil. So how did you come into this idea about writing a book about glasses?
Well, I've worn glasses since I was 5. I'm one of these characters who can't cross the street without them. I decided to cast them aside to see as people did before glasses and to see what wearing glasses has always meant for me. We would live a very different world without glasses, and after many years of wearing them, more than a half century, I simply decided it was time to figure out what they mean to the world.
So many people wear glasses on a daily basis or even just simply for reading. That's a major population or major part of the population, but I don't think anybody really knows where glasses initially came from?
Well, even the experts aren't entirely sure, but I can give you the best bet that people are using. And that's that glasses were invented in the 1280s, some 750 years ago, in Italy, and probably either in Florence or Venice. These glasses were called rivet glasses. There were two lenses in a wooden frame held together by a rivet, so you could open them and close them. They wouldn't stay on a face. You had to hold them in place. But years and years ago, people have been using, millennia ago, people have been using reading glasses or stone or some kind of primitive lenses that magnified images. The monks used them to roll across a page so they could see what was originally written and copy it. And then one day, somebody, nobody knows who, decided they wanted to try putting two of them together and lifted them up to their eyes, and kabang, we had glasses.
When did we first started wearing said glasses over the ears?
Well, it depends what you mean by wearing, and it also depends what you mean by glasses. If you mean with correction, as opposed to sunglasses that people wore in China many thousands of years ago, then you would probably go back to the 15th century when they were increasingly common. In the 14th century, it was the elite, the cardinals, the bankers, the politicians who had some access to them. But by the 15th century, they were being sold in the street by peddlers.
So are you saying that sunglasses actually predated uh, eyewear for vision?
Correct. Uh, People have tried to shield their eyes, uh, certainly since Roman times, where the famous or infamous Emperor Nero was said to use a large emerald in which to watch the Olympics take place and other sports events. They cut down on the amount of light which the eye receives. So, yes, sunglasses without prescription came before lenses with prescriptions.
Okay, so again, let's go back to the book. Your book is called A Four-Eyed World. When you first started putting this book together, were you surprised at how much information or lack thereof was available to you to write this book?
Well, there are a lot of books about the history of glasses, some scholarly works, some for the general public. There are books about fashion in glasses, a lot of them. But nobody before me has written a book about the experience of wearing glasses or how they appear in popular culture.
So, how do they appear in popular culture? And what was your personal situation since you have worn glasses since, as you say, you were 5 years old?
Well, in the movies, glasses stereotypes show up regularly. There are the nerds, the Greeks, the mad scientists, the librarians aching to peel off their glasses and let down their hair. There was Mr. Magoo back in the 50s, the patron fall guy of spectacle wearers. He had glasses, but he didn't wear them. Uh, so, there are very famous uses of glasses, like Marilyn Monroe hiding them in a strapless evening gown because she didn't want to be seen wearing glasses. And that's an important part of what I've discovered about glasses, the stigma attached to them, particularly for women.
Well, there is the yin and the yang from wearing glasses because some people seem to believe that, as you said earlier, a glasses wearer is a nerd. But on the other side, they look at somebody who wears glasses as being somewhat intelligent and smart.
Yes, it has that stereotype. The stereotypes of glasses have two parts: the images others put on us, their stereotypes, and the way we have those of us who wear glasses, and eventually that will be just about everybody, the way we've internalized that stigma in many cases. We have people out there who, whenever a selfie is being taken, you can see this in a restaurant or a bar, immediately whip off their glasses because they're firmly convinced they look better without them. I can't judge. Each person has to make that own determination themselves. But the prejudice against wearing glasses pretty much happened as soon as glasses were invented. When the first person put them on their nose, others said this was a terrible idea. You should accept the glasses, the eyes that God gave you, and not try and correct them. I don't know how we would live today without glasses.
Since you've written the book on this, and since you've had glasses since you were 5 years old, I kind of have to ask, did you ever think on getting contacts?
Well, I have several times. When I was doing field work in Africa, I'm a professor. I tried contacts on, but had to give them up because it's the hygiene conditions there were not ideal for wearing them. I another time I wore contacts and I developed an eye infection. And I, like many people, I'm a little squeamish about putting my finger on the surface of my eye, even with the glasses in between. So for me, I found the best vision took place with today's modern
Well,
glasses.
like many, I wear glasses. I'm wearing them right now, but I only wore them later in life. And as the old saying goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Uh, I thought at that point when I first got glasses that I don't want to learn how to poke myself in the eye.
Well, I can understand that. A lot of people stay with glasses rather than contacts for that exact reason. There's also the idea that you don't have to insert them, clean them, sterilize them every single day. Once you put on the glasses, you have them. Glasses are the first thing I touch in the morning and the last at night. They are the device that I keep closest. I basically can't survive without them. And for me, glasses are an important part, not just of my image, but of my survival.
So, since you've written the book on eyewear, the book is called A Four Eyed World. What was the biggest surprise to you in doing the research and coming up with the information that is in your book?
Well, that's a good question. I guess my biggest surprise would be the how long and persistent the images of glasses wearers, the negative images of glasses wearers, or glassers, as I call those of us who wear glasses, has been. I mean, it starts, as I said, as soon as glasses were invented, somebody else found a way to reject them and to reject the people who wore them. Even into the 19th century, there were opticians and optometrists who said not everybody should be able to get glasses, or glasses don't help you. Better to have two eyes than four, a doctor in the 16th century said. And then in our own time, really in the 19th, 20th, and even into the 21st century, there was a lot of prejudice against people who wore glasses, again, particularly women. And there's a reason for that. It indicated a badge of your age, which some people were hesitant to disclose because people after 40, 45, 50 will need reading glasses. That's just the way our eyes work and the way we age. But beyond that, there's this persistent image of a stereotype of people who wearing glasses who, yes, may be more intelligent, but they're also presumed to be more awkward, less effective, great when you're studying for an exam and you need some help because they're presumed to be intelligent, but not the first person you'd choose to invite to a dinner party or something else. Now, those images have changed. Harry Potter made people see that glasses could occur for a positive individual, but they're still there. And I have 2 chapters in the book that show the scientific research on what happens, how you're judged if you wear glasses. And this particularly applies to people that have worn glasses since they were growing up. And then a separate chapter on how people feel about their own pairs based on many emails and letters that I've received over the 5 years I was working on A Four-Eyed World.
It's interesting also that Clark Kent wears glasses, but Superman does not.
Of course. Of course, those glasses represent a kind of deficiency. And really, up until the 21st century, and a lot of movies were made before then, the glasses wearing character is somebody who doesn't quite have it all together, who is smart, presumably, or even mad and crazy, but not someone who quite fits in. And certainly not someone who's sexy. Throughout the classic period of Hollywood film, from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, basically men and women were not seen wearing glasses. They had to put on contact lenses or just manage as best they could. And when you do see them wearing glasses, they may be a little clumsy, a little unkempt, a little deficient. So that's the image that many people have inherited from their parents and grandparents, and even from watching those old movies. Today, things have changed a bit. The question is just how far they've changed.
It's a great idea for a book. The book is called A Four-Eyed World, How Glasses Change the Way We See. David, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Been my pleasure.
David Dunaway, author of A Four-Eyed World, How Glasses Change the Way We See. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0859, and you'll find the link to David's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
I used to be addicted to soap, but I'm clean now.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffile program.
I'm standing and fighting for Canada. Hi, this is Louise Penny. My books are mysteries I set in Canada. I love this country and there is no mystery why. I'm buying Canadian products to save Canadian jobs and protect Canadian businesses. That's a solution everybody can figure out. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
You're experiencing the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Sit back, relax, let it rattle around between your ears, tickling your cerebellum, and enjoy.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the author of Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. Plus, Kathleen Troy, dog trainer and author, is back on the program to talk about adopting a pet instead of buying one. We also have Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner coming your way, also a morning shower thought, and of course, an idiot of the day. and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. College students facing false AI cheating accusations are now using humanizer tools that alter text to avoid detection by AI detectors. These programs cost around $20 US monthly and scan essays to suggest changes that make AI-generated content appear human-written. Students like UC San Diego graduate Alden Creo said they're forced to dumb down their work after being wrongly accused of using AI, said Cal State Monterey Bay professor Aaron Ramirez. Students now are trying to prove that they're human even though they might have never touched AI ever. Liberty University student Brittany Carr dropped out after failing 3 assignments flagged by detractors despite showing handwritten drafts. Companies like Turnitin and GPT-0 have already upgraded detection software to catch humanized text, creating what experts call an endless spiral. I don't know which is worse these days, having to be a student dealing with all this crap, or having to be a teacher dealing with all this crap. Yeah. This next story asks the literal burning question of, how drunk do you have to be to drive a car on fire? In Florida, Patrick Rinaldi faces DUI charges after Brevard County deputies found him driving a vehicle engulfed in flames on January 23rd. Witnesses reported seeing heavy smoke from Rinaldi's car before he briefly stopped, then continued driving as flames consumed the entire vehicle. His wife was also in the burning car and barely escaped when he finally stopped. Deputies noted a strong alcohol odor, bloodshot eyes, and slurred speech from Rinaldi, who claimed he had only consumed 1 beer despite a liquor bottle found in the vehicle. He refused to submit to DUI testing. Rinaldi was charged with DUI and refusal to submit to testing before being taken to jail. The incident also caused a brush fire that deputies were extinguishing when they discovered the flaming vehicle. Wow. Some people who are completely blotto are still completely lucky. It's almost biblical that someone was watching over him. Then again, this story does include a burning bush. It's not uncommon in South Florida for fishing boat captains to find bundles of cocaine floating in the water. Usually the captains call the U.S. Coast Guard, which picks up the drugs, but 65-year-old Bradford Todd Picariello of Marathon allegedly had a different idea. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office got a lead and brought in an undercover federal agent to execute a deal. Picariello instructed the agent to bring a cooler to his boat so it looked like he was buying fish, and the agent bought a kilo of coke for the bargain price of $10,000. Picariello allegedly said he could sell up to 100 more pounds of the drug if the buyer was interested. Picariello was arrested and told agents where the rest of his stash was, in a storage unit. Investigators seized 23 additional kilos of cocaine, $8,000 in cash, and a .40 caliber pistol, plus the 38-foot charter boat. The name of Picariello's business? Outlaw Fishing Charters. Well, at least his marketing was honest. 2 Rhode Island lawmakers want to eliminate Mr. Potato Head's specialty license plates following Hasbro's decision to relocate its headquarters to Boston. Republican Representative Brian Newberry filed legislation to stop the state's DMV from offering the plates, citing the untold economic harm from Hasbro's departure after nearly 70 years in Pawtucket. The plates, first issued in 2002, cost around $40, with half benefiting the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, which has received nearly $60,000 over the years. Food Bank volunteer Lou Pryor criticized the proposal, warning any cuts to food programs will hurt vulnerable residents. Well, I guess from Newberry's point of view, this spud's not for you.
New Mr. Potato Head Mashable Heroes, each sold separately.
Not in Pawtucket, if he has his way. And now, this.
The Stuff File presents Sir Dudley Piddly Havisham Sedgwick Smythe's Poetry Corner.
A canner, exceedingly canny, one morning remarked to his granny, "A canner can anything that he can, but a canner can't can he?"
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Rodney Phillips is the author of the suspense novel Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. It explores how ambition, loyalty, and moral compromise collide in a world where one decision can cost everything. Rodney joins us from Pittsburgh via Riverside.com. Hi, Rodney.
Hey, Peter, how are you doing? Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm just tickety-boo. Thanks for being on the program with us. Now, I found out that this was a story that you first started writing when you were just 19 years old, and then it sat in the filing cabinet for 37 years. Why the long time between starting the book and finishing it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, so that's what ended up happening was I started writing this book when I was 19, and it was on notebooks and these like overstock cards from a furniture store that I worked at as a teenager, and also some legal pads that I had. So it stayed stacked in my file cabinet for 37 years because, life, happened. I got graduated college, got a real job, started a family. I had always been into coaching, so I was coaching football and also boys and girls lacrosse for well over 20 years. And both my children, I have a male and a female that went to college, and I wasn't coaching anymore, so I was actually driving my wife nuts on the weekends because I was used to getting up at 8 a.m. and I'd be gone all day, coaching and stuff. And she's like, "You got to find something to do, you got to get a hobby or something." So I said, "Well, I might pull my book out and take a look and see what I have there." And she's like, "You mean all those notebooks that we've been carrying around?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll just, see what I have." Well, obviously it was all handwritten. So my wife calls me the weekend writer because I actually, I work full time, as you know. And so I basically write on Saturday and Sundays. So in lieu of that, I started writing the book. And I added in every word that I had, whether it was on one of those cards or a notebook or whatever, word for word, I added it into the computer because obviously when I started writing it, we didn't have a computer. So once I had it loaded in, then I started, writing, more because I probably had about, let's call it like 60, 70 chapters that I had done at 19. But I think what, makes the story so good is the fact that now I was able to then take my life experience, infuse it back into the characters and into the story and explore, other themes like you were talking about with like conflict and communication and disloyalty, loyalty, which were explored in the book Dissension. But I was able to infuse that back into the story. And the original ending that I had at 19 isn't the ending that happens in the book Dissension, because I let the story then take me where it wanted to go, if you will.
When you started looking at what you had written when you were 19 years old, again, you had a lifetime of experiences, and with that comes a certain amount of wisdom. What did you think about what that 19-year-old wrote?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I thought that it was pretty good, but I don't think so. So if I would have finished the book at 19, I don't think that it would be as good as it is now, and I don't think I would have been a published author. I think the story, the backbone, the characters all stayed the same. But by, me having that life experience of how, people act, leadership, communication, all that I've done throughout my career, then I was able to, infuse that back into the story. So really enhance the story itself, but also enhance the characters. And growing up, like Patricia Cornwell is one of my favorite authors. And I think that she does such a great job with character development. And that was kind of, she was a big influence on me. And then also James Patterson. So there's a lot of short chapters in the book Dissension that kind of keep the story moving. So I have a lot of short chapters similar to like what James Patterson does, where he keeps that suspense going and keeps the reader thinking. So to answer your question, I think it was good, but it wasn't great, if you will. It really didn't have that depth, that impact, the character development, that sort of thing.
Book is called Dissension. The subtitle is A Disagreement That Leads to Discord, which is a loaded sentence right there. So what is the story about?
Yes, so dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord, is the definition of, dissension. And the story is about, it's set in Pittsburgh and Miami. And that's another thing that I actually changed. So when I wrote this book at 19, I had it in Pittsburgh and Las Vegas. And when I was growing up, and from the 80s, Vegas was considered Sin City. So that's why I had it, at 19 years old in Vegas. But then my son had actually read like the first 4 chapters when I started to rewrite the book, at 56. And he's like, Dad, why do you have the cartels in Vegas when really like Miami is a hotbed? So then I did some research, and he was, right on that. So then that's why I changed it to Miami. So my main character, Kylie, is a student attending the University of Miami studying criminal law. She gets caught between a war that breaks out between 2 rival drug cartels. One is Mexican and one is Cuban. They had been at peace for a long period of time. She gets caught up in this. They send a hitman after her. And then you find out through the story, like why she's specifically being targeted. As far as the dissension, something happens between the 2 cartels that obviously breaks the peace. And what I was talking about before about communication, if they would have just communicated, then they would have known that, one of the cartels, what happened wasn't really what happened. So they went forward with the territorial boundaries that were broken. And then obviously then the story stems out of control.
You mentioned that your son was instrumental in changing one of the locations in your book. Please tell me that your son isn't the same age that you started that book in.
Ironically, he is. He's he just turned 20 in December, but at the time that he told me, to switch the location, he was 19, which is kind of ironic, right?
Yes, it is ironic. By the way, what is your day job?
Yes, so I am a pharmaceutical sales representative in oncology. So the product that I work with is for breast cancer.
When you were 19 years old, and again, you were doing the story in Pittsburgh and Vegas. When you were 19 years old, what did you know about cartels, if anything? like how did this story come about in the first place?
Yeah, so I started initially exploring the idea. So when I was growing up, I had a friend that his family was kind of involved in the mafia, if you will. So that's kind of like what got me the idea of that backdrop of having, the cartels. And then basically then I was doing research. So I would go, back then I went to the Pittsburgh Library, things of that nature. But then, nowadays, then obviously I used Google and did a lot of searching and did, a lot of reading on cartels as far as, newspaper articles and all of that stuff that you could find online.
Congratulations on the book. The book is called Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. Rodney, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to seeing what you think of the book when you finish reading it.
Rodney Phillips, author of the suspense novel Dissension, a disagreement that leads to discord. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0859, and you'll find the link to Rodney's site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Why do we press harder on a remote when we know the batteries are dead?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here are two of the many glowing reviews that Michael Liebling has received for his novel The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife. Arabella magazine says,
I couldn't put it down. I want more books like this, and I want more books written by Michael Liebling.
Best-selling author Nicholas Kaufman says,
The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife is sharp, funny, thrilling, and endlessly original.
The only unsolved mystery here is why you haven't read it yet. The Serial Killer's Son Takes a Wife is available wherever you find books.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio that puts a smile on your face and a skip in your step. Please avoid skipping if you are driving.
And we still have an Idiot of the Day coming your way at the end of the show, but we don't have any time for any more Stuff File news, so let's just get to our last guest, shall we? Yes. Kathleen Troy is back on the show. She is a dog trainer and the author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad, as well as a series of YA detective mysteries. She joins us from California via Riverside.com. And Kathleen, this time around, we're talking about adopt before you shop.
Yes. A very wise and popular concept these days. We hear so much in the news about animals being abandoned and they need homes. And there's a lot of wonderful, wonderful dogs just waiting to have you adopt them.
Now, you sent me a statistic, and I was kind of shocked by this. I'm old enough to remember the first time Bob Barker said, get your pets spayed or neutered. You have mentioned that there are 6,000 cats that are euthanized every day in the United States?
Yes, and that statistic is old. That is probably 4 or 5 years old. I checked recently, ASPCA, they announced that 920,000 animals are euthanized every year. Every year.
Wow. So I guess the question has to be asked. I mentioned Bob Barker, and I'm thinking, well, gosh, before Bob Barker made this a national cause, probably no cats or no dogs were spayed or neutered.
No.
Am I wrong in saying that the number was really much, much higher then, or not?
I think things were just different. People didn't pay that much attention to abandoned animals. They would say, oh, there's always a stray in the neighborhood. And people didn't, take that animal in or things like that. But I think we're just noticing it more and more. And the more animals you have, the more breeding that's going to go on. So yes, I think we have larger numbers today.
So again, the point is adopt before you shop, and I don't want to cast shade on pet shops, but are they still selling cats and dogs?
You don't see them anymore. It used to be a common thing, at least here in California, that you would see a pet store at any large shopping center or even at our malls. And you just don't see them anymore. Now I ask people when I meet them and their furry little friend, I'll say, "Where did you find your baby?" And for the most part, they've adopted their fur baby. Or every now and then I'll hear, "Well, I got it from a reputable breeder." So I think those are the two main areas that people look to these days when they're thinking about getting a pet.
I guess it's very similar to a situation when you went to back in the day when you went to a pet store and purchased a pet. But are there any different regulations and or suggestions or things you should know before you go in to adopt a pet?
Well, people often have an idea of what they want generally, and that's the thing generally. So they might be thinking, I need a medium dog, or I'm older and I could not control a rambunctious dog or a high energy type dog. So I need a lap dog. So people have usually a general idea when they go into, let's say, a shelter or an adoption center. And sometimes that idea changes when they see those little faces. But this is how it works here in California. I don't know if it's the same where you're at, Peter, but um, in California, you go in and you say, I'm looking for a medium size, kind of medium energy dog. And they'll bring out maybe 4 or 5, and they bring them out one at a time. And let's say that the third one you just fall in love with. You don't get to adopt the dog right there on the spot. Typically, what happens is you fill out an application, they check you out, some time lapses to make sure that you are embarking on this endeavor with a good cause, with a good purpose in your heart. Like, yes, this is going to be the dog that's going to come home with me and stay with me forever, rather than one that you're getting on a whim. And so when all those things are satisfied according to the agency, then they proceed. So the good news about something like this is that you first of all know you're saving a life. That's pretty powerful. And secondly, you are pretty confident in that you're going to get a healthy dog because this dog has already been checked out, by veterinarians and things like that. And then here in America, and again, I'm not sure about Canada, but the dog will be spayed or neutered before you adopt.
One of the other things in comparing, back in the day with pet stores as versus adoption is in a pet store, they're usually puppies and kittens, so they don't have what's a history of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to adopt a dog, you don't know necessarily what you're getting. That dog might have been mistreated and might have temperament issues or be scared or whatever the case may be. So, how do you know about that particular aspect of a dog when you're going to adopt?
Well, you're right. There's no guarantee in those areas, just as there's no guarantee if you were to get, let's say, a brand new puppy, one that's just 8 weeks old. You don't know how that puppy's going to turn out either. So that's why, again, our routine here is to have the adoption take place over a period of time. So you may come back and visit your hopefully soon to be pet 2 or 3 times, interact with your pet, take your dog for a walk. things like that, play with your dog, and so on, and just see if you do have that connection. As far as the physical history, the past history, again, is going to be an unknown. But those are things that you can somewhat pick up if you're around your dog for a period of time. Do they shy away when you raise your hand? Do they shy away when you raise your voice? Are they always eager to see you? Things like that. Will they stay in a corner? Do they have to be coaxed out? All those things are indication of personality and behavior and perhaps what has already gone on in their life.
Regardless of whether you have had pets before or you're getting a dog for the first time from an adoption agency of some kind or a shelter, uh, do you think it's important when getting said dog that you go through dog training? I mean, you are a dog trainer, so do you feel that's even more important than getting a newborn puppy?
Yes, I do. I think all dogs need training and all parents of dogs need training too. It's a two-step process. It's a way for you to bond with your dog and it's something that you shouldn't ignore. And I'm so glad you brought up this question because I have a friend who they lost their dog 2 or 3 years ago, and they love this dog more than anything. And they were utterly bereft when she passed away. So the time went on, and they adopted a German Shepherd puppy from a shelter. And the puppy is probably about 8 or 10 months old. And they've had her now since Christmas. And when I was talking to them yesterday, they said, "Whoa, she's really high energy." And I said, "Well, she's a German Shepherd." And I said, "But how's she getting on?" And they said, "Oh, well, we just can't manage it. So we sent her off to doggy boot camp." And that is just so wrong in so many ways. First of all, they just got her. They just rescued her from a shelter. She was just settling in, and now they're sending her to camp for 30 days. As far as that dog knows, she's being returned to a shelter. She doesn't understand the difference. Also, she may receive some training there and she may bond with a handler, but when the dog comes back home, there will be no bond between the parents and this dog. They're going to be back almost on square one. It's a lazy way of trying to train your dog, and it just won't work. It just won't work. You will not be the alpha dog. The handler that was at the boot camp is the alpha dog, and you're not. So, back to your question. Yes, even if you've had dogs before, you and this dog need to go through some training so the two of you bond. And some breeds take to training much easier than others. Other dogs just enjoy the whole process and maybe never really catch on, but they do enjoy being with you. And that's what's very, very important. But yes, all dogs and all dog parents need training.
One last question. Spring is coming up, but before spring even gets here, Valentine's Day is coming up.
Mhm.
And there was a time when people would give cute little puppies and kittens as a Valentine's Day gift. Um, I'm assuming you think this is a bad idea.
I think the gift of a puppy or a cat is a wonderful idea, but you need to do it wisely and not make it a surprise. So let's say, Peter, that I wanted to give you a dog for Valentine's Day, and I've heard you say over and over and over that you would love a St. Bernard. Well, wonderful. Let's go get Peter a St. Bernard. But it turns out that you just moved to a condo. It's not going to work. So maybe what you've expressed that I would love the St. Bernard in reality isn't something that you would be able to accommodate. So if I showed up on Valentine's Day with a St. Bernard, you would be pleased and crestfallen all at the same time. Better yet, I'd say, "Hey, guess what? My Valentine's gift to you is a puppy. Let's go pick one out. And chances are you're going to pick out something that I didn't anticipate for you, but it's going to be the perfect fit for you. And that's what's important. You want always to pick out a pet with the idea of making it a forever home. And, there's nothing like the first impression, I think. It's almost like, seeing something that you know is right from the start. You just get that click, you get that feeling, and then continue on with that. Have some experience with it. Play with the puppies, see if you interact, all those things that we talked about.
Excellent advice all the way around, as usual, Kathleen. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us once again.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Kathleen Troy, author of Dear Dylan's Dog Squad. She's also the author of the YA detective mysteries entitled Never Believe a Lie Twice and Never Believe a Con Artist Twice. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0859, and you'll find the link to Kathleen's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order all of her books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
29-year-old Hunter Burns of Charleston, Indiana, was at least somewhat honest. He stopped at the Jefferson County District Court in Louisville, Kentucky, to turn himself in for an outstanding warrant. He was arrested and processed on the spot, emptying his pockets, including a large wad of cash, which he put with other items. A sheriff's deputy started counting the cash for the receipt, but noticed most of it looked fake. No microprinting, colored paper, fibers, or security strips. Investigators found 15 mother bills, that's real currency, but there were 84 counterfeit $100 bills plus 40 counterfeit 20s for a total of $9,200 bearing the same serial number of the real bills. Burns was charged with 124 counts of criminal possession of a forged instrument, enough that the U.S. Secret Service was brought into the case. I'm guessing that he's not making bail, at least with what he had in his pocket. Now, why, oh why, would you walk into a police station to give yourself up for outstanding warrants when you have a wad of counterfeit money in your pocket? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0859. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0859. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as P.A. Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including kdxradio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. While it may be an enjoyable, pleasant experience, some side effects may occur. Listening to Peter may cause bloating, drowsiness, Tourette's, web feet, or an oily discharge.